He was a millionaire who judged people by their appearance his entire life. She walked into that restaurant looking like a disaster, and his first thought was to escape through the back door. But what happened in the next hour didn't just change his evening. It shattered everything he believed about success, wealth, and what truly matters in life. He would later call it the most expensive lesson he never paid for. But to understand why this money encounter became the turning point of his existence, we have to go back to the moment she walked through that door. The Seattle rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Waterfront Grill, one of the city's most exclusive dining establishments. Inside, golden chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. David Chen sat alone at a corner table, checking his Rolex for the 5th time. His sister had begged him to give this blind date a chance, insisting that Sarah was different from the superficial women he usually met. David had reluctantly agreed, expecting someone polished and sophisticated to match the elegance of the venue he'd chosen. He adjusted his Tom Ford suit jacket and took a sip of aged whiskey, glancing at the entrance with growing impatience. Other diners chatted quietly around him, the soft clink of crystal glasses creating an atmosphere of refined luxury. But David's peaceful moment of anticipation was about to be shattered in the most unexpected way imaginable. The restaurant door burst open, and every conversation stopped. A woman stood in the entrance, completely drenched and covered from head to toe in thick brown mud. Her navy dress clung to her, ruined. Her hair was plastered to her face, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She clutched a mud-splattered purse and looked around desperately until her eyes found David's table. He felt his stomach drop. This couldn't be her. This couldn't be Sarah, but she was walking directly toward him, leaving muddy footprints on the pristine marble floor. The hostess rushed forward, clearly unsure whether to assist or escort her out. Other diners stared openly, some with pity, others with barely concealed disgust. David's mind raced with escape plans, fake an emergency call, claim he was at the wrong restaurant, anything. His reputation mattered, his image mattered, and this woman looked like she'd crawled out of a ditch. But what David didn't realize in that moment of judgment was that this disaster, walking toward him, was about to teach him something no business deal ever could. Sarah reached his table, breathless and mortified. She tried to explain without drawing more attention. Her car had broken down on the highway. She'd tried to push it to the shoulder, and a passing truck had drenched her in muddy water from a roadside puddle. She'd considered canceling, but her phone had died. She'd taken an Uber straight here, not wanting to stand him up. David sat frozen, unable to reconcile the genuine distress in her eyes with the chaos of her appearance. Every fiber of his being screamed to politely excuse himself. He'd never felt so uncomfortable in his life. The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly waiting for David's signal to ask them to leave. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything. If your heart breaks for anyone who's ever been judged unfairly for circumstances beyond their control, please like and subscribe to support stories that remind us to look deeper. Then something shifted in David's chest, a small, quiet voice he usually ignored. He stood abruptly, removed his expensive suit jacket, and draped it over Sarah's trembling shoulders. He signaled the waiter and calmly asked for towels and a private booth in the back. Sarah looked up at him with shock and gratitude flooding her hazel eyes. As they moved to a quieter corner, David found himself genuinely asking if she was okay, if she needed anything. And when she started to apologize again, he stopped her. He asked about her car, about her evening, treating the disaster as if it was the most normal thing in the world. For the first time in years, David wasn't thinking about appearances or what others thought. He was just present. And as Sarah began to relax and tell him about her day, about the third graders she taught, about the student whose lunch she debought that morning because his family couldn't afford it, David realized something stunning. He was actually enjoying himself. But the real transformation was still to come. The evening unfolded like no date David had ever experienced. Sarah's outer chaos belied an inner grace that captivated him completely. She spoke about teaching with such passion, about her students' dreams, about the small acts of kindness that made her job meaningful. She didn't ask about his wealth or his business. She didn't perform or try to impress. She was simply genuinely herself. When dinner ended, David insisted on driving her home. They found her broken-down sedan still sitting on the highway shoulder. Without hesitation, David pulled over, loosened his tie, and stepped into the muddy grass. Together, they pushed the car to a safer spot while rain continued to fall. By the time they finished, his custom suit was ruined, his shoes were destroyed, and he was laughing harder than he had in a decade. Standing there in the rain, covered in mud beside this remarkable woman, David felt something he'd forgotten existed: pure, uncomplicated joy. He wasn't a millionaire in that moment. He wasn't worried about image or status. He was just a man who'd almost missed out on something extraordinary because of his own prejudice. 6 months later, David stood beside Sarah at the grand opening of Mitchell Community Library, a project he'd fully funded in her name. It served the underprivileged neighborhood where she taught, providing resources to hundreds of children. As he watched Sarah's face light up seeing kids pour through the doors, David reflected on that muddy evening that changed everything. He'd spent his whole life accumulating wealth, believing external success defined a person's worth. But Sarah had taught him that true richness lives in compassion, in selflessness, in the courage to see past surfaces to souls. Sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive in the messiest packages. The question is, are we wise enough to look beyond the wrapping? What would you have done if your date showed up covered in mud? Would you have stayed or walked away? Share your honest answer in the comments.